Today, we're talking politics. You all keep asking, so I figure, you know what? Let's dive in. I keep getting this question popping up. Trump versus Harris. Trump versus Harris.
Which one's better for the economy? Which one's better for the Dominican Republic?
So look, today I'm going to share my thoughts on this U.S. presidential cycle, but in the context of what it means for the Dominican Republic. Again, my opinion, my thoughts. I don't intend to dive deep into politics in this channel, but U.S. elections have consequences, whether they be in the United States or anywhere in the world, really, but maybe more specifically for a country like the Dominican Republic because of how much there is tied together between the two nations. Now, I'm thinking through all of the comments here, and let me just kind of give a few disclaimers and a few thoughts of what to expect in this video. First off, I have been through a Dominican election cycle maybe a little bit more closely than most. And what I mean is my wife's uncle ran for alcalde of a big city in the Dominican Republic, came in second place. I was there when members of the president's team came to visit him to say, hey, look, we're backing another candidate, but we like you and we have a lot of alignment. Is there something we could offer? Can we do something here? My uncle said no, and he stayed true to his candidacy. Or my wife's uncle, sorry. Nah, screw it. It's mi tío. But I got a bit of a unique look inside what it is to be in Dominican politics through that experience. Not saying that makes me an expert, but I get those little comments like,
stick to what you know nothing about Dominican politics.
Probably from people who just followed it for years. Well, hey, this guy, the gringo, I got inside. A second thing is I am a fairly independent guy. A lot of us say that. But I will share today a crazy thought. And that is, I actually think Kamala Harris ends up being the best thing that ever happened to the U.S. and to the Dominican Republic. And let me be clear, I'm predicting that as we look back on this time in history, we will all say, thank you, Kamala Harris, for your contribution to a better world. Ooh, this is gonna be saucy, because I don't think it's gonna end the way many of you are thinking. All right, let's get going. All right, so here's the deal with U.S. politics. This is my take, and I bet you most of you watching this right now are saying the same thing I'm about to. This probably isn't for most of us a decision between like, oh, this guy is great or this gal is great. It's probably more like, I got two bad choices. Which one is worse? There are loyalists to each party. There are MAGA loyalists on top of it. But the point I'm making is many of us who are just saying, hey, look, we just want what's best for the United States and the world at large are looking at these two and saying, which is the lesser of the two evils? Here's what I could also say. All the things that we hear on the left and right wing media about the other side, they're all true. Did you see JD Vance going into a donut shop? How awkward it was? Yeah. Don't you think that's weird? It's weird. And this is from a guy who actually, before he was a politician, spent an evening watching a ball game with JD Vance. On the flip side, Waltz walking out during the DNC with his little happy dance was freaking cringy. Trump being an embellishing, bloviating windbag, true. Harris as, let's hold that thought. Let me talk about Harris in a different context. Because like I said, I think she ends up being the greatest thing that ever happened to the United States and Dominican Republic. The United States is the greatest country on earth. I think most of us would agree with that. It is, however, in decline recently for many reasons I talk about on this channel. There's been something that's captured the country and dragging it someplace that just doesn't align with what I believe to be its historic values. Free speech, freedom of expression, and politically there's just no discourse anymore. People they hate each other. That's it. It's left, right, nothing else. But still, it is the greatest idea that's ever happened in this world. And because the United States is the superpower of superpowers in this world right now, the rest of the world takes its cues. It's like a company. If you got a CEO or a boss at a company, if that boss demonstrates certain values, everybody else in that organization, whether they're leaders or baseline employees, follow the values. If the leader of the organization is corrupt, it's okay for others in the organization to also be corrupt. This is why we don't want China or Russia being the world's superpower, because it comes with totalitarianism. It comes with censorship and principles that Americans, or just the free world in general, don't want. So this election cycle to me is really all about which of these lesser of the two evils is less likely to create division, to censor its people and information, and to violate the core values of a free society. Over the last number of years, there's been this progressive movement out there. Call it woke if you want to, but it came with I think decent ideas. Like, hey, people should have equal opportunity under the law and under this country. We should stamp out things like racism. We don't want cops killing people just because of the color of their skin. Now, there's a lot of data and discussion points across the board on all of what I just said, and I'm not going to get into all of it here, but the point is the ideas everybody can agree with. You and me should have an equal opportunity. So, a wave happened. The AOCs of the world were elected. Kamala Harris as well, who was considered to be a very progressive candidate, became a senator and eventually found her way to the vice presidency. As these progressive principles started to take root, there has been a ton of pushback, including from yours truly. I think, for instance, a trans person should have the right to be trans if that's what they want to be. But when you force it upon my kids, now I have a problem. I think that there should be equal opportunity for man, woman, black, white, whatever it might be. But when you're forcing equal outcomes, that goes too far. I think that speech should have some level of regulation in terms of what not to say. Some, like yelling fire in a crowded building when that's false. But I don't believe in compelling speech or squashing it under the guise of mis or disinformation. I believe government has a role in protecting its people, but I don't believe that government's overreach and going out and weaponizing against its own people is safe or good for anyone. Look, the Dominican Republic has made strides, whether people want to admit it, around corruption, political stability, economic growth. I mean, it's been tremendous. And that's all because the Dominican is modeling American society. We're talking about free elections, talking about reforms in the education and healthcare space, improved infrastructure. A lot of way to go on all of it, but it has improved, and especially improved dramatically in the last, say, 5 to 7 years. If the U.S. slides further toward corruption, further toward censorship, then we succumb as a country to the globalist agenda. Think Justin Trudeau, think Venezuela, think Brazil, think Russia, think China. That's not the model we want the Dominican Republic, or any country for that matter, following. My take. So then how is Kamala Harris going to be the greatest thing that happened to the United States and for the Dominican Republic? It's very simple. She's about to restore balance in the Democratic Party. Let me explain. Kamala Harris is the Vice President of the United States. That does not give her the right to be the indoctrinated candidate for president when the president, who was elected democratically and chosen as the candidate for 2024, steps aside. We all know what that was, making her the absolute candidate that nobody can dispute. Not having an open primary is the threat to democracy that those on the left claim is currently present to those on the right with the Trump agenda. That's not a left-right thing. That's just bull. I would say the same if it was the right, the left. It doesn't really matter. Either way, it is not the way that a democracy works. Now let's add in all the other things that we're learning from the last 4 years. Mark Zuckerberg's letter. It admitted that the Biden administration pressured him to censor information for the American people, to spin content. It admitted that he succumbed to that pressure when all of them said that they didn't. But most damning to me in that letter was the admission that the FBI went to Meta, went to Zuckerberg, and told him to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story because it was Russian disinformation. And they knew it wasn't. Folks, I don't care what you're voting. I don't care what your politics are. All of that is scary. You would call that in the Dominican Republic evidence of what has always been a corrupt history. We have to call it that in the States as well. We also see the IRS fueling up with number of agents being hired to come after all of us for whatever they perceive we owe them in taxes. On top of it, the IRS has accelerated its program, get this, of revoking passports for those who have certain levels of tax debt. Now, I get the principle behind it, but do you want the IRS deciding whether or not you're eligible to leave the country, move to the Dominican Republic? I sure don't. You see the weaponization of the Justice Department against its political rivals. I'm sorry, but some of what you're seeing right now with Trump is exactly that. But here's the thing. Trump would do it too. Again, we're looking at two evils, and we're trying to determine which of these are the lesser of them. As I record this, it was just announced that Trump was re-indicted on the same charges essentially as he was previously. Many are calling that like,
oh my God, the left is panicking. They're trying to get rid of Trump because they know he's going to win.
Maybe, but honestly, just pragmatically and practically, it's the right move given the circumstance. What I mean is this. He was brought up on charges. Whether we agree with those charges, whether we feel they're political or not, it doesn't matter. It was brought up on charges. It was brought in front of a grand jury. He was indicted by a grand jury. Then the Supreme Court came in and said, well,
oh, hey, any official acts he can't be indicted for.
So the prosecutor had two choices, maybe three. Choice one is just throw it all out. He's not going to do that. There is a segment of the American population, many of you, who feel that Trump needs to be held accountable. Those people need to be honored. And our system is a fair jury trial to determine guilt or innocence. The second option is he could have amended the indictment, simply pulled out what wasn't relevant and resubmitted the indictment. No further need for another grand jury. But what he did was he said, all right, I'm going to pull out about 14 pages of this, which we deem to be, based on the Supreme Court ruling, obvious presidential business that he can't be indicted for. But there's all this other stuff that, hey, we need the court to set a precedent and determine whether or not it is indictable, convictable for a president. Are they official acts or are they not? And he went back to another grand jury to get another indictment, which from a public perception means two grand juries have indicted Trump on this issue. Again, that's just how the system works. I do believe, and I think even the most left-leaning person does see the political side of this. I wonder and doubt if Trump was not running, if he just like, hey, I'm retiring, I'm going to my Mar-a-Lago golf resort, I'm going to be there for the rest of my life. I doubt that these proceedings would move forward. It was because he was keeping it open about potentially running again that these things bubbled up. But there may be legitimacy to them. Let's let a jury decide. So I'm saying all of this to make sure you see, like, I am not somebody who goes like, oh, left bad, right good, right bad, left good. I'm just not. It's all bullshit. All of our politicians are corrupt. All of them take money from special interests. All of them then, when they're elected, need to do things that they didn't promise they would do, maybe a little different, in alliance with those special interests. When billionaires contribute hundreds of millions of dollars to a campaign, it ain't out of the goodness of their heart. They want something, and both sides take that kind of money. So let's not get it twisted here. There's no right and wrong candidate. There's bad and worse. Back to Kamala Harris, why she's the best thing for the United States and why she's the best thing for the Dominican Republic. Kamala Harris is not a good candidate. She is unelectable. It's not about her politics, not about her policies per se, although the desire to price fix, essentially, that's the dumbest economic stance that anybody could ever take. She even said it in her speech. She said,
look, most people out there, most businesses are charging the right amount, but there are a few that are gouging prices.
okay, following that logic, you want to make sure that those few that are gouging prices have their prices put back in line. Prices are up over 20%. If most are charging the right amount, the issue isn't price gouging. It doesn't work out mathematically. Most are charging the right amount. 20% increase in prices at grocery stores. Es no bueno. So her policy is just pandering to what I call an uneducated electorate that says,
Yeah, that sounds good.
Harris hasn't debated. Harris hasn't done one interview. Maybe she has by the time this video releases. And she's attempting to renegotiate terms of the debate to make it way easier for her because she can't do anything without notes. Kamala Harris is not a good candidate for president. The Democratic Party screwed this up and they had their chance. But because Kamala Harris is not electable, and because the moment she debates and the moment she does interviews and the moment she's out there unscripted, she will reveal how much of an empty suit that she is, it will moderate wokeism, it'll moderate the progressive agenda, and it will kill off this radical faction on the left that's driving many of us crazy. This is the point at which I would say, hey, if you love what I'm doing, subscribe. Some of you might be unsubscribing right now, and that's your choice. To be honest with you, what I've learned from Dominican politics is they like to take in all the information. I actually follow people on the left and on the right, and sometimes I want to unfollow them because of just how biased they are. But I've learned from living in the Dominican Republic, like, it's just you take in both sides of the information. It's not right and wrong. It's one side versus the other, but we as people are aligned. It's not politics versus politics. It's people versus politics. So you do what you need to do, but again, subscribing helps the channel grow if you like what I do on this channel. So Kamala Harris will reveal herself, will not be able to be elected. It will kill off wokeism. Here is the evidence of that. About 15 years ago, there was a movement on the right called the Tea Party. Everybody remember that? Like I said before, on the left-leaning agenda, progressivism, the right-leaning Tea Party agenda, it wasn't bad. Lower taxes, smaller government, so on and so forth. But then once elected, and there were like 60 different congressmen elected under the Tea Party movement, they just dug in their heels and didn't negotiate. In fact, the left offered a level of tax cut, and they said, no, it's not enough. They didn't compromise, and they created an absolute standstill in Washington. Maybe you could blame that as the beginning of what we have today, partisan politics that don't negotiate with each other. Up for you to decide. Was the Tea Party? Drop it down below. There was a person back then that became the face of the Tea Party movement. She looked a little different and felt a little different than the normal old white stuffy guy made up the Republican Party politics in the past. She was youthful, she was edgy, she had a message, and she was propped up by the right as the next big thing until she had a debate and she had to have discussions and she had to go off script, and it revealed that she was an empty suit. She was baseless. She was not the movement leader that they thought she was, and therefore the Tea Party movement died off as it needed to. Who was that? Her name was Sarah Palin. Many of you probably remember her. So again, this isn't me saying, hey, I'm revealing my Republican roots here, or that, he hates Kamala Harris because he's a Trumper or a MAGA guy. What I'm saying is this happens on both sides of the aisle. There's evidence from the past which supports my theory that Kamala Harris is the Sarah Palin of the woke progressive movement, and as she's exposed over the next couple of months, it'll moderate wokeism, just like the Tea Party was moderated. Now, I want to be clear. I think a progressive agenda and the Tea Party movement have a place in our politics. I think you need a Ted Cruz and a Marco Rubio, who were still Tea Party candidates, but there were 63. Now there are 19. You also need the AOCs of the world. You need the Bernie Sanders. You need the progressive left as well. I think I'm going on the wrong side left, because all of these people represent the amazing spread of diversity of thought and opinion that is the American electorate. There are people that tell me back in Dominican Republic how certain public schools are starting to do things like teach trans education and so on. Where do you think those cues are coming from? They're coming from the United States. The United States is 40% of all of the Dominicans' business, import and export. That is huge. The DR is going to be aligned with the administration running the United States, and they're going to socially engineer the Dominican Republic to align with the United States agenda. Wokeism ain't it. Here's what the Democrat Party should have done. There are two people that I admire and have followed. In fact, one of them was who I wanted to vote for in this election cycle. The other one in 2020. Back in 2020, a Democratic candidate for president popped up. She was a congresswoman from Hawaii. Her name was Tulsi Gabbard. Love her perspective, love how she thinks about things. She is a center-left Democrat. In this election cycle, there's a guy who came out vying for, and should have been, in the conversation for the Democrat nominee for president. He would have been my easy vote if he was. He comes from a legacy family. He ran on the independent ticket. His name is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You don't have to agree with everything that everybody says that is your candidate. Kennedy just said the three things that mean a lot to me. I want to protect our children. I want to avoid censorship, and I want the wars to end. As that happens for the United States, the rest of the world comes into peace and prosperity. Democrats had the opportunity to elevate these voices, but they succumbed to the woke left progressive agenda and boxed them out. What have they done? They're backing Trump. So here's the deal. Kamala Harris will end the woke progressive takeover of the Democrat Party because she's inept and incapable of being elected. We'll see how that prediction ages in a couple of months. Better or worse, that Donald Trump may be the lesser of the two evils. Now, this is where people are going to go nuts, right?
He's a convicted felon, disinformation. He attacks his political rivals.
Yeah, so does the left. He stole classified documents. Biden stole classified documents. We all know the president is only one piece of the power dynamic in Washington. If Kennedy and Gabbard, along with somebody I really admire in Elon Musk, are backing this guy, what can you do? I just talked to a buddy of mine this morning whose mother is a staunch Democrat, hates Trump. She said today, I'm voting for Trump, and I hate that I have to. But RFK was who she loved. Since he went that way, that's what the American electorate's going to do. So I'm projecting a Trump victory, essentially. And I think Kamala Harris and her exposed, therefore moderating the Democratic side of things, which is a great thing for America. We get back to more of a centrist view, the Bill Maher's and the Russell Brands of the world, who I admire, and we can actually have conversation in this country, hopefully. And I'm going to guarantee you this. After 4 years of Trump, we're going to feel the same way about the right, and the left will feel more moderate. Just watch. But a Trump election does, in my opinion, create more opportunity for the Dominican Republic than a Kamala Harris election. And here's why. The chances for economic prosperity in the country increase under Trump more so than they do under Harris. Harris is about more taxes. The Harris and Biden administration have presided over the inflationary environment and then try to sell it as not that bad just because, it was 19% and it only went up 2% this year, completely ignoring the full 20% increase in the cost of groceries and other things. There are three forms of income that fuel the Dominican economy. First is remittances. That's you as a Dominican American sending money down to the Dominican Republic. That is a massive, massive influx of capital for the country. And if you don't have enough money in your pocket to send it, the DR suffers. Second is tourism, and the number one client for tourism in the Dominican Republic and all the growth that we've seen there is the United States of America. Again, less money in your pocket, less opportunity for you to take that vacation or go visit the country. And third is the rise of real estate. The people that are buying it are Dominican Americans looking to repatriate. Canadians, Europeans as well, but mostly Americans. How do I know? I talk to the real estate community on the ground. It's not white Americans or something else. It is Dominicans buying in the Dominican. That's what's happening. But again, less disposable income, you're going to stop paying your HOAs on that property you purchased in the Dominican, which is going to create issues for the real estate market in the Dominican Republic. So all I'm saying is I believe likely that the Trump election actually provides more income at the end of the day in the pockets of Americans than the Harris election does. But I don't like either. If only Bobby Kennedy could have been the elected. If only Bobby Kennedy could have been the guy, man, I would have been voting for him. What do you all think? Is he the best guy? Am I right? Wrong? Let's have the discourse like Dominicans would. Let this channel, let the comments below be where we actually have a conversation and not shout at each other from one side or the other. This is just my opinion. I'm sharing it publicly. For some of you, you're going to be like, yeah, man, you're spot on. For others, you're going to say you're an idiot and you have no idea what you're talking about. I hope you don't. I hope you do it respectfully. But the point is, there's a lot at stake. As the U.S. election goes, so does the Dominican Republic economy. And this is me looking at the electorate right now. Back then, Republicans were out of their minds and Obama rose. And Obama, whether you like him or not, he got shit done. Now we're on the other side of that. I'm not comparing Obama and Trump. They're two completely different candidates. Obama was actually somebody people really got behind. People do get behind Trump, but a lot of people are more like, not her. I gotta vote for him, I guess, because I have no other choice. That's what I got. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment below. And if you want more on all of this, I talk a lot about things in my newsletter. The link below allows you to subscribe to it, and I appreciate y'all following along.